Monday, the weekend is over. Thank God, man. NFL,
Not a good
Adam.
weekend.
I had a good NBA night last night. I just heavy tilt entered everything because of football. Uh, not the greatest week from a football standpoint. No, didn't have much Eric Ebron. I'll tell you that much.
Dude, even my dad
And
had Eric Ebron in our weekly season long league. How'd you not have him?
what the fact that your dad had him says that I probably shouldn't have had him.
2 out of 8 people in this league had him. I pulled it up. It was like 25.
It's crazy. He had what? 3 total looks and 3 touchdowns, or 4 total looks and 3 of them were touchdowns.
Yeah,
Yeah,
one of them was a rushing touchdown.
exactly. Yeah, he had a carry and I think 3 targets. He scored on his lone carry and scored on 2 of his 3 targets. Whatever. How'd you do you do solid in NFL yesterday?
Yeah, I did okay in NFL, made about 40%, gave it back plus some in NBA last night. So could have been a worse day, but still wasn't great.
All right, well, let's try to get back on track today. Glad to have all of you with us. You know the drill, right? Hit us with a thumbs up. It helps us immensely. And if you haven't done so yet, use the promo code Deeper Dive, one word. When you go to awesemo.com, AWESEMO.com, go to the plans page, and all you got to do is use Deeper Dive. You click join now and you'll see. It'll guide you through the process for a free week of premium content, everything behind the paywall, including Slack. Yeah, you don't want to turn that up. All right, let's get into it, Adam. We've got a whole lot to talk about. 9 games here. We've got a little over an hour to make it happen. Let's start with so let me mute this. Let's start with Washington and Orlando. This game was really interesting because last time these guys played each other, I think it was Friday, Adam, the Wizards bench brought them back from a big deficit. So Porter, Keefe, and Howard didn't return. But Howard's normal rotation in a spot like that would have been 33 minutes. Porter and Markieff both lost big minutes as a result. And then Howard comes back the very next game on a back-to-back and plays 33 minutes. So you have to assume, we'll start with the front court here because it's the biggest question mark for Washington. You have to assume that barring foul trouble, blowouts, etc., that Howard and Morris and Porter are all right back on track. And that matchup against Orlando was far less about the matchup specifically and more about the fact that the bench brought him back from the pits of hell.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not looking at all into the rotation to close the game there because I don't think that it was an intentional, we're going to close with this unit. It's that Bradley Beal and John Wall didn't leave the floor, and the other 3 guys, Oubre, Green, and Rivers, happened to be on the floor when they came back from a 25-point deficit. So there's no reason to think that the game plan going into today isn't for Howard to play his 34 minutes, Markieff Morris to have his minutes staggered with Howard, where he gets backup center minutes, assuming he can stay out of foul trouble. Otto Porter probably plays around 32 minutes as well. I expect them to go just as starter heavy as they've been trying to the last couple of games. And I think that makes the front court very underpriced. Dwight Howard's still sitting at 6,100 on DraftKings. Granted, it's a deep center position, but it's still a nice spot if you're going to get 33 or 34 minutes from him. Markieff Morris is essentially free on DraftKings and FanDuel. The fact that he's been playing the backup center minutes with Dwight, he didn't do it against Miami because he had just picked up 2 fouls, but he did it in the Orlando game, at least in the first half. We've seen it happen a few other times this season. Makes him a little bit more valuable as well. I think the price tag on him is just way too low, and then Porter has obvious upside as well.
Yes, sir. All of them in today's deep dive, outside of Porter. I don't think I mentioned Porter just because I can only talk about so many people.
Right. Porter's not.
Yeah, but his price tag is nice. You mentioned on the podcast today for this morning that Markieff Morris was too cheap. I totally agree there. And look, Dwight Howard, I think, is a fine play. The 16% usage concerns me, but he's averaging almost 19 rebound chances per game. That's a lot, man. That's an elite territory. So I do still think he's too cheap. But Adam, there is no doubting the fact that the center position is very deep tonight across the board.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what will kind of keep my exposure to Dwight Howard at least somewhat in check, because there are other guys that I want to play in his price range. There's at least one guy up at the top that I really want to roster. So I'm not going to go too crazy with Howard, but I do think he's a really good play.
So do I. I also think that John Wall, who is $8,600 on DraftKings, Adam, is underpriced. And here's why. Look, he's had 41 minutes or more in 3+ games with 20 field goal attempts or more in all 3 of those games. And sure, they're an 8-point favorite, but this team hasn't been good. They're 13th in the East. They're 3-9. Wall has 28% usage, a 38% assist rate, 16 potential assists per game. He's 3rd in the entire league in touches per game. Everything points towards this being a really solid spot at a mid 8K price point for John Wall. And I'll let you talk about Brad Beal, who also on DraftKings is $7,100.
Yeah, I love the price tags on both of those guys. We're looking at 2 games in a row now. I believe, going from memory, that Wall and Beal have played every single minute of the second half together, and they're both just too cheap. Like, the fact that the Wizards suck and that the Wizards as a team cannot play defense doesn't take away from the per minute production you get from Beal and from Wall. And I think that on DraftKings specifically, they're just way too cheap. The only issue is I'm having trouble deciding if I want to play them in lineups together or how much Washington to play together, because they're all underpriced, but I also don't expect 3 of them to have a ceiling game in the same night. But outside of that, that's like the only issue that I'm having.
It's the only issue I'm having too. But I still have interest in Wall. I mean, he's the type of guy that can go out there, regardless amount of how many games and how many days, play 40 minutes. We know that Brooks has no intention of limiting this guy. He's going to run him till the wheels fall off at him. And the same thing goes for Bradley Beal. And in that game against Orlando, where 3 of the 5 starters did not return for the final quarter, Wall and Beal both played monster minutes. They have absolutely no risk in minutes outside of a blowout. And I don't know, Washington just hasn't been dominant enough. They haven't been good enough for me to factor that in heavily when it's difficult enough to project blowouts as it is.
Yeah, and one thing I did misspeak, Wall played the entire second half against Miami. Beal did not, but Beal was dealing with foul trouble. He had 3 fouls at halftime. Yeah. He picked up his 4th halfway through the third. So I think that had everything to do with it. I would have expected him to get up around 38 to 40 minutes again had it not been for the fouls.
Yeah, me too. I don't see how he wouldn't. It's really too crucial of a spot right now. I get it's still early in the year, but this team needs to win games. And their best chances of winning games is when John Wall and Bradley Beal are on the court. And I think you're going to see a whole lot more of that today. By the way, we haven't gotten news yet on Aaron Gordon, but yesterday's rotation was really interesting for Jarrell Martin, Adam. He played 9:31 in the first and then didn't return, or 9:41 in the first, didn't return until 3:31 in the second. So you're looking at about 13 minutes there, right, in the first half. Second half, he played the entire third quarter and then 2.5 minutes into the fourth. As you mentioned, it was a blowout. We talked earlier. It was a massive blowout. When he was taken off and he didn't return, they were up by 30 points. But if Gordon were to be out tonight and we were to assume that Martin's first half rotation would be in line with his second half rotation and potentially even a few more minutes in the fourth quarter, I project them around 26, 28 minutes, which playing power forward at minimum salary is going to throw him right back into my lineups just as he was last night.
Yeah, absolutely. And the main takeaway for me from that second half stretch where he played, 14 consecutive minutes, it's not that I expect that exact rotation, but it's that they're limiting how many minutes this guy plays. So I'm very confident if Gordon is out, giving him 26 to 28 minutes, barring foul trouble. And then I think if Gordon's out also, you see closer to 24 to 26 minutes for Jonathan Simmons, who's really, really cheap. Wesley Wundu also gets a boost, although he's the least productive out of the 3.
He's just terrible, yeah. But Jonathan Simmons, as you mentioned, 28 minutes last game. He was on pace to see, I think, around the same in terms of blowouts. I'm talking about, if you were to take his first half rotation. Very cheap, as you mentioned. He's always been better with no Vooch on the court, but isn't everybody. Aaron Gordon is still a high enough usage guy with enough minutes that can really open things up for the rest of this team. Mo Bamba is another guy. The blowout cut into his run, but he had a really strong game in 18 minutes, Adam. And now he's facing a Washington front court that, despite getting the services of Dwight Howard, who we still don't even know if he's interested yet, Mo Bamba does not have the most imposing matchup himself either if Gordon's out. I think let's break this down. If Gordon does sit and this game stays competitive throughout, what do you put Bamba around? Because we're really just seeing him and Vooch split minutes, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him creep up around 22 or so in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I just have him playing 14 to 16 minutes. I think that the fact Bamba played 0 minutes at the 4 yesterday, and we hadn't seen him do it in the few games before yesterday, I thought there was a chance it would happen yesterday. But the fact that it didn't happen yesterday makes me really, really hesitant to project him for anything more than Vooch's backup minutes, because Washington's not a big front court. This is a team that plays Dwight Howard alongside Markieff Morris and then rolls with Markieff Morris and Jeff Green. So it's not a spot where I would expect Orlando matchup wise to want to go to Vooch and Bamba together. So I don't have him projected for anything other than backup center minutes.
Yeah, the only way I see the minutes increasing is if Jarrell Martin comes out and he just stinks up the joint. Like he just gets it just looks terrible early. You might see a situation where the hand is forced of Steve Clifford and he has to run Bamba a little bit at the 4. That wasn't necessary yesterday whatsoever. I mean, they just decimated the Knicks. But I think we both agree Martin at minimum salary, if we don't have if we don't have Gordon, is pretty much as clear as day. So we don't need to get much further into that. You mentioned Simmons, and then Vooch, Adam, if he had gotten his full run yesterday, now granted, much of this production was the result of the blowout, but he dropped 21 and 14 in 26 minutes. I mean, he really is one of the most talented offensive big men in the league, and he continues to prove it this season. And he benefits from no Gordon as well. So I don't think we should forget about him either.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's really, really difficult to actually prioritize him on this slate. But whatever Vooch I get in my lineups, I'm perfectly happy with because I like the spot and I love him as a player.
Exactly. And just from a tournament standpoint, we've seen Vooch drop 60 fantasy point games when nobody's on him. And it makes a big difference if you happen to be on him. But center is deep. It's tough to prioritize him there, but we can't just skip over him in this game because he is such a good player. Also, 8,500 on FanDuel. So that's a very reasonable price point when you consider that he's only, $1,000 or so more than Dwight Howard and just wildly more productive. So I do think his price point is pretty friendly on FanDuel.
Yeah, I think it's more appealing on FanDuel. And then one other thing strategy-wise that I'm doing is I'm making sure that in my Vooch lineups, I pair him with someone like Wall or Beal, just because when I have him, I know that there's such opportunity cost at the position that I need to do everything I can to maximize his upside. So I'm trying to make sure that I get it as part of like a mini game stack and not just, like naked Vooch running around.
For sure. We got a bunch of questions. Derek White, thoughts? Steven Adams, 50 fantasy points tonight, more of a statement. We'll get to that, of course. A lot of talk about Cat, a lot of talk about the potential that Jarrett Allen is out for Brooklyn. You're in the right spot, fellas. You are in the right spot. We're going to get to all of that throughout the show. But first, let's talk the Pelicans and Toronto Raptors. Early in the season, you and I compared Kawhi Leonard to Noah Syndergaard from a DFS standpoint, in that when Kawhi Leonard is priced up around that high 9, low 10K range, there really just isn't that much value. But people still tend to play him. But when he comes down to a more reasonable salary, $8,700 on DraftKings, he becomes a whole lot more appealing. Now, the issue here, obviously, is that you have Kevin Durant on this slate. Paul George without Westbrook, even he is going to be hard to fit. Even Embiid at 10,100 is going to be tough to prioritize. So, and you have John Wall, of course. So how do you prioritize Leonard? I'm not saying you do, Adam. But what I am saying is if there was ever a time to play him, you're getting him at an $8,700 price point, 94 on FanDuel, where compared to Paul George, he's $900 cheaper. And not only that, Kawhi Leonard, some interesting numbers here for people that are nerds like me and like stats. I know you're one of them. He's second in the team with almost 11 rebound chances per game. But here's where it gets interesting. He's averaging 46 touches per game. 46. That's not a lot. It's second on the team behind Lowry. But he has 0.533 points per touch. He leads the league in points per touch by a massive margin. No one's even up at 0.5. Klay Thompson second at 0.492. So just in terms of reliability and efficiency, Kawhi Leonard seems to always get it done. And at 8,700, he is still discounted given what he's capable of doing for a good Raptors team against the Pelicans team that really hasn't shown much defensively all season long. Go ahead. It's all yours. Talk about it.
Pace up spot for Kawhi here against a bad defense, like you said. I really like him. It's just a matter of how much can I prioritize him. On my initial crunch, I got about 10%. I'll probably end up with a little bit more than that. I have more of him on DraftKings than I do Paul George, who's $1,000 more. But it's just still really tough because, Leonard's underpriced, but so are so many people on DraftKings. So it's still tough to get there. I haven't run my FanDuel crunch yet, but so I don't know how much I have there. But on DraftKings, I do like him. I've projected for around 50 points, but I think I'll probably end up in like the 10 to 20% range.
Yeah, I'll probably end up around there too, which I'm okay with. Like if I end up with like 15% Kawhi, I think that's a pretty decent number. But it's fun. We both had the same train of thought. Just simply Kawhi Leonard at 8,700 or even 94. That's one of those prices where you're scared not to have any of him.
Yeah, exactly. He can easily go out there and give you 55 to 60.
Right. And at 8,700, you're very happy with that. It's just a 99 10K. I'll pass, especially when you had Durant cheaper than him in the other week and people were talking about playing Kawhi over him. Come on now. Come on. You got to tune into the deeper dive more often. We'll change your thought process. Adam, what else for Toronto?
Not a whole lot. I'm getting some Serge Ibaka, not a ton of him. I don't like him as much, obviously, when Kawhi plays. But at 6K on DraftKings, I'm getting some of him. Outside of that, though, there's not really anything.
Manningdale City, as we flip to the Pelicans, says, Laffy, don't you think this is the first ever comfortable fade for AD? He's never had a big game against the Raptors or Spurs. All right, or Spurs.
Kawhi.
Yeah, versus Raptors or
versus Kawhi probably is his point.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I got things mixed up there. So here's the thing. I absolutely, and thanks, Chris Austin, we love you too. I absolutely think that this is a spot where you can fade Anthony Davis, especially given how much I love Kevin Durant, right? There's no question about that. Comfortable fade, I never say Davis is a comfortable fade just because he's capable of doing ridiculous things. But yeah, I do worry about a guy who's facing a front court defense that is very stout. Ibaka's back to playing like primo defense, which is a surprise. They're limiting opposing teams to bottom 7 rebounding. They are top 5 rim protecting team. They are allowing a bottom 5 efficiency to opposing front courts this year. So yeah, not a good spot for him. I don't think I'm going to have much Anthony Davis, but in terms of comfortability, I'm never purely comfortable fading. I'm about as comfortable fading him as I am playing him, and I'm never comfortable playing Anthony Davis.
Right. It's still scary to fade him, but the reason actually that I feel somewhat comfortable about it, it has nothing to do with Davis or his matchup. It has to do with even, let's say Davis goes out there and throws up like 70 fantasy points. You're not in a good spot, obviously, if you don't have him. Right. But there's so many mid-range options and other high-end guys like Embiid and Durant on this slate that can get you to that same point that I'm not too concerned about. It kind of reminds me of the spot last time that Davis and Durant played, where Davis went out and he got off to a really good start. He ended up only finishing at like 59, but I was just sitting there like, okay, even if he gets to 65 or 67, I'm perfectly fine with that because I have so many other guys that I think are going to score up, are going to just blow their price tags away, that it doesn't really matter all that much. I kind of feel the same way here. Even if he does have a better game than anyone's projecting him for, if you have Davis, you still have to run pretty good for a lot of other guys to fail in their really good spots for less money.
Yep, I'm right with you, man. I am right there with you. And Kevin Durant's a hard player to fade at in this spot. We'll talk about that at length. Slow Poker 62 says Drew and Mirotic are the plays there, meaning for the Pelicans. Mirotic is probable. I'm having a tough time getting much exposure to anyone for the Pelicans on this 9-game slate with so many other good spots. Adam, maybe you're in a different position than I am.
No, I'm in the same boat. I'm not going to talk anyone off of Drew, but I would just much rather play John Wall in his spot. I would rather save some money and go down to some other guys. I'm not ending up with any Drew right now.
And Buck Armstrong says Q Kawhi oversell. Nice. I've told you on this show, I'm not selling you on anyone. You take the information or you don't, guy. I'm just giving you the information that I have, and that's what it comes down to. So, yeah. We have anything else in this game to talk about?
It's basically Kawhi for me.
Yeah, me too. You mentioned maybe a little bit of Ibaka, but
Yeah.
outside of that, it's tough. And I mean, I don't think Lowry's in the most difficult of spots just because of how excellent he's been. But he's another guy that I don't see how I could play him at a $200 discount from John Wall on DraftKings.
Yeah, exactly.
Lowry, what, 8,700 on FanDuel, so he's a little cheaper, but I still think you can do better.
I mean, I haven't projected to play like 6 or 7 minutes less than John Wall.
Right. Yeah, and from a per minute standpoint, you John Wall's probably still above him when the season comes to an end, or at least very close. So yeah, we take the extra 5-6 minutes there. Miami and Philadelphia, Adam. We've got a shorthanded Philly team for sure, but they do have Mike Muscala back. They do have Wilson Chandler back, who sat the second end of a back-to-back out. He's going to start this game, which we should have expected. Miami's favored by 2 points, though, at home. 225.5 total here. The Philadelphia side of the ball. I mentioned to you earlier today when we were, going over the slate off air or off the stream that Joel Embiid this season has fantasy performances of 79, 70.3, 69, 66, 64, 60, 55, 53, and 52. Those are his best games. He's proving that he has as much upside really as anybody right now. The tough thing is center is ridiculously deep, but it makes it more difficult, Adam, when you're getting Embiid at a price tag that has dropped significantly from where it was just 3 days ago.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that at 10,100 on DraftKings, even I think it's 10,700 on FanDuel, he's too cheap for his upside. I'm not really getting to him because there are so many other guys at the position. Someone in chat had mentioned Steven Adams earlier. Obviously, you have Cat, you have Cauley Stein that's really cheap, you have Howard that's really cheap, Whiteside on the other side of Embiid. There's just so many options here that give you 50 plus fantasy point upside that I don't feel the need to pay a premium and hope that I get 65 or 70 from Embiid here. He can certainly do it, and if he does, then obviously you're in a really great spot. But I just don't really see myself having a ton of him because the mid-range centers, it's not like there's a couple that are underpriced, and if they have a bad game, you're just walking in the money with Embiid. You basically need an entire range of guys to fail that has like 5 or 6 guys with legitimate upside there, and it just feels like it's asking a lot. And that's not even to mention wanting to pay for guys like Kevin Durant. So I'm not comfortable at all in how little Embiid I expect to have, but I probably won't have much of him.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. It doesn't feel good though. It really doesn't because, I only had like 10% Embiid against Charlotte. Good thing I had 10% because my initial crunches were coming up like 2%. And I thought I got to get a little of this guy in there because of what he's capable of doing. And then you get a 42, 18, 4-4 game with 79 fantasy points. And the funny thing about that is you had Borrego before the game, the night before, specifically talking about how he's going to go out of his way to guard the guy.
Yeah, that was it. I mean, he did use Biyombo. It didn't work.
No, it didn't work at all. But I mean, teams try. I think this spot against Whiteside could be tough, though. We had I don't know, Andrew Jones. Was it Andrew Jones? I'm not sure who it was. Yeah, he said Joel Embiid and Whiteside going to counter each other. I guess he means cancel each other out? Question mark. I don't want to say cancel each other out, but I don't love this matchup for Embiid. It's just that he's cheaper than he should be. Embiid at 10,100 and 10.7 is too cheap for a guy that is producing monster fantasy totals, every other game. So I'm going to sprinkle him in, Adam, because I feel like having none of him could end poorly. But if you're a guy playing 1 or 2 or 3 max lineups, you're probably not landing on Joel Embiid.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's a mediocre matchup with Whiteside. Embiid has enough range that he can cause some problems for Whiteside, but it's still, Whiteside's a good rebounder. He's still good at protecting the rim. So it's not the best spot. And for whatever it's worth, in 4 meetings since the start of 2016, Embiid's averaged 1.3 fantasy points per minute against Whiteside.
Taz Journey says Embiid isn't going for more than 30 fantasy points tonight. All right, guy. All right. All right.
For whatever it's worth, I've been projected for 52, and I don't have any right now on DraftKings.
Yeah, put down the pipe, guy. 30 fantasy points is really ridiculous unless he gets into foul trouble. And if that's the case, I want to see a damn disclaimer before you make some egregious statement like that. What else from this game, though? We saw them start 4 guards, if you want to include Simmons, against Memphis. Landry Shamet, Fultz, Redick, and Simmons with Embiid at the 5, even though Simmons is 6'10", 6'11". But we have Wilson Chandler into the starting lineup today. Mike Muscala is back. Not a Philly team, even without Covington and Sarge, that I'm super stoked on.
No, I do think Muscala is a good value play here. He was pushing 24 to 28 minutes before he broke his nose or whatever it was in practice. He missed less than a week, so there's no reason to think that he would be limited here. It wasn't a lower body injury, and he should still be just as conditioned as he was a week ago. So I think that with Chandler limited to 28 minutes, to 20 minutes, you see Muscala, come in at 26 to 28 minutes here at 3,500. What he does with those minutes is anyone's guess, but I think that on a slate where there's plenty to pay up for, he's a very reasonable value option. I like JJ Redick's price tag. Outside of those guys, though, not a whole lot, because I think that you see Landry Shamet's minutes come back to the 25 to 26 minute range. I think McConnell plays around 15 to 16 minutes, essentially just backing up Simmons. So, or with Fultz. But so I think that Muscala is my favorite value play from this team.
Yeah, here's my only thing about Muscala, because I think you're right in terms of just the lack of depth. But this is a Miami team that plays pretty small. I mean, yes, you have Whiteside. I get that. But, you're starting a guy in Winslow at the 4 who is 6'7", and then you're playing him for 35 minutes a game. You have Magruder 6'4" starting at the 3, and then you have Richardson, Whiteside, and Ellington logging big minutes. Well, Dragic is back, so that doesn't count. But you have Dragic. So this, outside of Whiteside, this is a small lineup. I wouldn't be wildly surprised to see Brett Brown go with a smaller lineup throughout a lot of this game. And Muscala is like 6'11". He's a big fella. So what is he? 6'11", 240. He can shoot the 3 though, which is interesting. But that's my only concern, is that Miami does play small outside of the hulking Hassan Whiteside.
Yeah, I mean, Olynyk, I expect to, obviously get some minutes at the 4 where he would match up with Muscala. And then also, I agree, Miami is they do play small, but how does Philly counter that, necessarily? Are they just going to play Korkmaz more?
It's that. Well, that's the thing. I don't know. I'm not even going to pretend to know the answer to it. I just think that we've seen Brett Brown do a lot of weird stuff. You might see Jonah Bolden play another 10, 15 minutes like he has in each of his last 2 games. Yeah. It's tough to say. I just really don't know. So that's the thing. But Muscala is also very cheap. So I'm not trying to put anyone off of him. I'm just expressing my concerns with Brett Brown maybe doing something strange if Miami's playing, all of those guys I just mentioned for 30-plus minutes a game. All right, Chicago and Dallas. Adam, let's get into it, man. We've got a pick'em. Actually, Dallas by 1.5 now, but it was a pick'em. It opened as a pick'em, 212.5 total here. 2 teams that are not very good. Oh, come on, man. Did someone just say Amir over Muscala? I think who was that? It's Slack. Zeus. No, not for me, Zeus. Not for me. No, Amir.
Amir's the backup center.
Yeah, right. Amir's minutes really aren't going to change unless Embiid fouls out early. That's really the only way Amir sees any additional run. Chicago and Dallas. We got a lot of notable players here on some bad teams, but a whole lot to talk about. Where do you want to start?
Harrison Barnes? As weird as that is.
Really? You gonna do that to me, man? All right, fine. Go ahead.
I mean, what do you want to throw with?
I mean, I know Matthews is out. I get it. Harrison Barnes is a wretched fantasy value every single time I play him.
Yeah, I mean, he's also $5,000 on DraftKings playing 35 minutes a night against Chicago.
$2,000 too expensive, if you ask me.
I mean, from the Dallas side, he's actually my favorite play. I just think that it's really hard for him to fail at that price, and he does have some upside. I've seen a lot of talk about JJ Barea, and I'm gonna play some, but I'm not as high on him as I think some other people are because
I don't think his
Wes Matthews.
minutes will change here, honestly.
What'd you say?
So I don't think his minutes really change, maybe 2 or 3 additional, but I don't see it being a huge difference in terms of Matthews being out. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean I have him at 22 minutes now instead of like 16, but people looking at his last game where he played around 22 minutes, they were all at the expense of Dennis Smith Jr. He just didn't play his normal minutes. And Matthews has been, for the most part, backed up by Dorian Finney-Smith this season, with the exception of subbing. Matthews has subbed back in for Luka Doncic when he comes out. So I think it's only opening up like around 8 guard minutes. And you still have Devin Harris there. You potentially have Jalen Brunson. I'm giving JJ Barea another 6 minutes just to try and get him into some lineups, but I'm having trouble projecting him for more than around 22 minutes here. So if he's going to end up being really popular, I'm definitely coming in under the field on Barea.
Oh, I'm gonna be under the field probably no matter what on Barea. Like, okay, if there's one thing Barea does well is that he's a good per minute producer. So at 4K, I'm never talking anyone off of him. Even at 20 minutes, Barea can give you 30 fantasy points, which is nice, right? There's no question. But this is also a team that is coached by somebody, Carlisle, who has really no intentions of loading up Barea with minutes if a guy is out. Like if Dennis Smith Jr. was out and Devin Harris was out, then we'd have a different situation here, and I think you'd get Barea up to like really solid run. But then you'd probably even see Jalen Brunson. Like we saw that be the case in one game, right? You know, Brunson played 30 minutes in that game, and that was without Dennis Smith Jr., an actual point guard. Barea in that game played 16 minutes. So no, I am not confident that Barea, inherits a bunch of minutes because their starting shooting guard is out. You broke it down nicely there, but just look back at when Dennis Smith Jr. was out, and I don't even think Devin Harris. Devin Harris obviously didn't even play in that game. So you had no Harris, you had no Dennis Smith Jr., and Barea still saw only 16 minutes. That to me, in a game that was decided by only 9 points, is not encouraging.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think that like 22 for Barea, I think is probably or could be a little bit optimistic. And
I think that's probably his minute ceiling right now.
Right. Like it's really hard for me to find more minutes than that.
For sure. I like the idea of Barnes. Well, no, I hate the idea of playing Barnes, but it makes a lot of sense. I begrudgingly added him to today's article as an honorable mention, but I couldn't bring myself to write a full blurb on him because I just want to vomit. But he's going to get run. Wesley Matthews, does soak up a decent amount of usage, not a ton, but he gets some shots up. Everything could change if Luka Doncic is out. Do we have any update on him? Last I saw, he was still questionable.
I haven't seen any update. I just always assume he's playing because he's been questionable for like 80% of the games this year.
I know. You'd think he played for the Patriots.
Right.
But I'm with you, though. You got to assume he plays. What's interesting about him is he hasn't really had like a monster game yet. I think he did drop a 50 in there at one point. But all of that's possible because you're talking about a guy who just contributes in a lot of different areas, right? He's a jack of all trades. 26% usage. His assist rate's about around 22%. Rebound rate around 11, 35 minutes almost per game. He actually leads the team in potential assists, and he's second in rebound chances behind only Jordan. So he doesn't do anything amazingly well, at least not in his rookie year, including scoring, but he does everything well enough to where the 50 fantasy point game is definitely in the cards every night, and it's not exactly a formidable opponent in the Chicago Bulls. What do you make of Doncic here now that his price has come up a little bit?
I like him. It's just like I like the matchup. I like him as a player. I think that you do see more big games going forward than we've gotten in the past. It's just really hard for me to prioritize him. Most of the exposure to him that I've gotten, it's because of setting rules. Like if I play Zach LaVine, I have to have Luka Doncic or someone from Dallas. So it's just really difficult for me to prioritize on this slate because there are so many underpriced guys, and he seems correctly priced.
All right. Look at the bottom right corner. Promo code Deeper Dive. You see it in the chat right now. You sign up a free week of premium behind paywall membership at awesemo.com. All you got to do is use the Deeper Dive promo code, one word. Go to awesemo.com, AWESEMO. Click the join now in the top right corner, and they will guide you to a really great spot. So use the Deeper Dive, and also hit us with a thumbs up. We'd appreciate it. Let's get this over 100, please. Thanks, guys. And girl, probably one or two girls, one or two. So we appreciate you as well. Wendell Carter Jr. I even asked you, like, I was like, I got to ask Adam because I can't, maybe he'll know. I couldn't figure out why he only played 25 minutes last game. It wasn't foul trouble. We've seen that before. It wasn't that he was playing poorly, but he played 25 minutes in a game that they won by a point.
Yeah, it's kind of just seemed like a game where it was just a weird rotation. You have Robin Lopez playing ahead of Felicio now, but I don't expect that to have a significant impact on Wendell Carter. I mean, they kicked Lopez out of the rotation. It would be weird if they're suddenly like, hey, we need Robin Lopez to play 22 minutes a night, so you're capped at 26. So I'm still projecting him at 30. I think he has upside for a little bit more. I think that it's possible he comes in a little bit lower. On a slate this deep at center, in a relatively tough matchup against DeAndre Jordan, I'm not getting a lot of Carter, but I still think he's too cheap. He's too cheap on DraftKings for his upside. So if you wanted to get to him, I'm not going to talk you off of it. I just don't really think I'm there.
Yeah, me neither. He's been like a focal point of the deep dive of the articles over the past couple of weeks, DraftKings specific, but it wasn't the case tonight. I have him listed, but not as a top play. We'll get to Steven Adams and talk about him and his production with Westbrook off the court. Surprisingly, really, really good this year. Wendell Carter Jr. at 64 is still someone we need to talk about, but not a guy that's going to be a focal point either. You pretty much hit it on the head. Lopez is not the only one that's been booted from the rotation. It looks like Cameron Payne has seen his last minutes for now as well, Adam. He's probably not going to factor into the rotation at all going forward, at least from what Hoiberg intended or intends. We're going to see some Ryan Arcidiacono. That's a tough one. And he played 30-plus minutes in back-to-back games. He started the last game. The problem with someone like Arcidiacono is that if you look at the numbers, I think he had like 3 potential assists last game. It's still the Zach LaVine show. Arcidiacono's cheap. There's no question. And if you're getting 30-plus minutes, I'm not going to talk you off of him, but it isn't the most, voluminous spot playing on this Chicago team with a backcourt that has someone like LaVine eating into so many possessions. So I'm curious to know where you're at on him.
Right. If you roster Arcidiacono, you're basically hoping that he shoots very efficiently. Everyone he passes the ball to also shoots very efficiently, and he steals a few, passes or dribbles or whatever, and just, runs into points in his 30 to 32 minutes on the floor. He has an 8.1% usage rate in his time alongside Parker and LaVine this season. So it's not a spot where you're, expecting him to do a lot offensively. It's purely that he's cheap and playing a bunch of minutes. And to me, the only way that you end up with him is if you're playing, 150 or more than 150 lineups and just kind of sprinkling him in. I just don't think that he has upside at 3,700 to really kill you if you don't have him, and he just doesn't project that well. It's still, like you said, it's Zach LaVine, it's Jabari Parker, as much as he sucks, but the opportunity's there. With this unit of LaVine, Parker, and Arcidiacono on the floor, LaVine has a 35.9% usage rate this year, 17.5% assist percentage. Jabari Parker has a usage rate at 26.5%. Wendell Carter's at 22%. So that's where the offense is coming from. That's where the upside's coming from. LaVine in particular on DraftKings is still only $8,300. Should play around 38 minutes as long as this game stays competitive. It's a nice matchup against Dallas. I love LaVine once again here. Parker projects well for me. I'm going to limit how much exposure I have just because he's so inconsistent and so reliant on scoring. But I do think that at 5,800 on DraftKings, he's still underpriced.
All right. By the way, where is it? Jordan Horwath says Carter got benched and that Tristan was beating him up. Could be the case. Could definitely be the case. I didn't see anything on it, and I didn't watch the entirety of that game. So I will take the word of someone that did, and we can run with that. I think with Richard Giacono, there are other cheap point guards that I like a lot more and aren't that much more expensive. So that's where
Yeah.
I stand on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that JJ, if you got 22 minutes of JJ Barea, I think he has more upside, or at least he hits it more frequently than 32 minutes of Arcidiakono.
Yeah, and he isn't even one I was referring to. By the
Right.
way, let me say, Arcidiakono will probably gain ownership right now, because Aaron Gordon is going to play. He is active.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, it's like my point was just that like I clearly am not that high on Barea tonight, and I still would rather play him than Arcidiakono.
Exactly. Yeah, and we'll get to a few of these other guys that I definitely have some interest in. Anyone else in the Chicago-Dallas game? There's a decent amount. Oh, did you know Jabari Parker leads the Bulls in touches per game this season?
I'm guessing he probably leads in missed shots too.
He's got to. It's been brutal. But this is your daily reminder that he's 5,800 on DraftKings. He's going to fall face forward into a good game at some point, and he's still really cheap. So, yeah, he's still second on the team in potential rebounds. He leads them in touches, which is just ridiculous. And you still have a decent usage rate. So if you're getting around 36 minutes in a close game, hopefully that 0.69 fantasy points per minute since entering the starting lineup 6 games back will start to increase. All right, Minnesota and Brooklyn. Adam, Jarrett Allen is questionable to play this game. And on the other side, Karl Anthony Towns. Look, we'll go back and forth with pricing. Towns is 90 or 10-3, sorry, on FanDuel. But on DraftKings, he's 8,900 still.
Yeah, it's really difficult for me to get away from Towns on DraftKings. It's just a matter of how much exposure to him do I want. His projection does depend on if Jeff Teague is actually in or out of this game. But even if I project Teague to play, you get, going back to last season, with Teague and Wiggins on the floor and Jimmy Butler off of it, you have a 24.1% usage rate for Towns. I have him projecting for about 55 DraftKings points, and that's with Teague in. If Teague's out, that usage rate jumps up to 28%. The projection obviously would jump as well. So it's just too good of a spot for me to pass up at 8,900 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, the price obviously isn't as appealing. He's only $400 less expensive than Joel Embiid, which makes it a little tougher. But also, in general, on FanDuel, centers are priced up more than they are on DraftKings. So just because he's more expensive doesn't mean that he's relatively that much more expensive compared to other guys that we can roster. So, like I said, I haven't done my FanDuel crunches yet. I'm sure I'll still get a lot of him, but probably we'll have more on DraftKings.
I'm going to have a lot on DraftKings. I mean, you're talking about a guy who, let's not lie, Jimmy Butler who was renting space in his head. He took up a lot of space in Towns' head. I believe that. Even so, Towns has 64 plus DraftKings points in 3 of his last 7. So the guy is still giving you a high ceiling. He's $8,900. To me, that's just way too cheap for someone that can give you 65, 70 fantasy points against a Brooklyn team that, despite Jarrett Allen's improvements defensively, they've been ravaged by centers this year. Just, looking at starting centers against them, they're like allowing top 5 marks in blocks, rebounds, points, efficiency, all of that. So this is a good spot for Towns. There's no more Jimmy Butler. He's got a usage rate, I think, 29% around with Butler off the floor. There's really not much not to like for me about Towns at 8,900. Now, what I don't like is the ridiculous reporting coming out of Minnesota when we get to injuries, Adam, because Jeff Teague last night was ruled out, and then he goes through shoot-around reportedly, and now he's questionable, and Derrick Rose, who's still – you want to talk about underpricing. Towns is well underpriced on DraftKings, has been for a while, and Rose is still sub 7K on FanDuel, but now we don't really have any idea what the scenario is with Jeff Teague yet.
Yeah, and that obviously changes a lot. I mean, Teague's 4,500 on DraftKings, and if I project Teague for 26 minutes with his rates without Butler on the floor alongside Towns and Wiggins, he still comes out as a good value play. It's possible, I guess, that he plays more than 26 minutes, and that would just be icing on the cake. So if he plays, I really like him as a value play. Obviously, if he doesn't, then I don't. And you would get, even more production out of Rose. You would expect more point guard minutes as opposed to more minutes off the ball. So Rose to me is still, even if Teague's out, I have trouble getting to Rose on DraftKings, but he would still be a really good play on FanDuel. If Teague is in, I still think Rose is a good play on FanDuel, and I still won't be getting to him on DraftKings. So fortunately, Teague doesn't affect a whole lot in that regard, but Teague himself, I think, is a really interesting value play if he does play.
Yes, sir. The question now is just what type of playing time do we see? Because Teague, before the injury, was locked into 30-plus minutes in close games, right? Actually, he played less than 30 minutes only once, and that's when they got smoked, railroaded by Milwaukee. So he's been out now for about 2 weeks. I don't know how much playing time he gets, but I do know that I kept listing him as a value play throughout the last week because he was so cheap. It would make sense to do so again. But I don't know. I mean, I'm curious. Derrick Rose is shooting 46% from three this year, Adam. It's not crazy to think that you could see decent minutes with Rose playing off the ball at the 2 along Teague. And then, I mean, now I won't even say off the ball because Teague plays off the ball a lot as well for a point guard, right? He'll just stand around at times when you had Butler initiating the offense. I don't think it's crazy that Teague and Rose see some minutes together.
Yeah, to me, and you said Rose is shooting 46% from three this year. He's shooting 30% for his career. So even if we say that he's improved, that would be pretty insane.
No, you're missing my point. What I'm saying is that Thibodeau might look that this season Rose is putting up wild numbers from three. I mean, today's article I mentioned it's unsustainable. We all know that, but Thibodeau may look to exploit that, knowing that he's got a guy that's shooting lights out from three right now, not minding throwing him at the 2 for some minutes when he actually is shooting well above his head from beyond the arc. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, that was his role when the whole team was healthy. So I would expect if he plays that you still see plenty of minutes from Rose, just mostly at the 2 and not at point.
Right, and I still don't even know if it would affect him too much because I don't think Teague is going to really siphon away all that much. It's not something I worry about too much. Wiggins, though, is also questionable in this one. So he went through shoot-around. He's a game-time decision, but I don't really know what anything means in Minnesota right now, Adam.
Right, yeah. I mean, we'll know before that game actually starts and we can adjust on DraftKings. Maybe we won't, and they'll just surprise us after. But but yeah, I mean, I'm assuming Wiggins played since he went through shoot-around, but I have no idea.
Yeah, if you are playing, intend on playing Wiggins or Rose or Teague, if it is on DraftKings, see if you can get them into the guard forward or utility spot, just so you have more leverage to swap off if we get the news after lock, but before 8 p.m. Eastern. On the other side, you have Karis LeVert, who's interesting. He's also questionable. Left in Saturday, midway through the game. He's 6,400. At this point, really, I'm just kind of not on anybody here, especially being that I don't know if he's going to play or not. But I will ask you, what happens if there's no Jarrett Allen? Does that mean that you'll immediately have more interest in Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, whose minutes have dramatically and inexplicably fallen off a cliff over his last 3 games?
Yeah, I would have more interest in Hollis-Jefferson, and I would have interest in Ed Davis because Davis has been the primary backup, obviously, to Allen, and it's a spot where they could use him defensively. And then also, you would think that they're kind of forced into playing Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, who I have no idea why he hasn't been picking up minutes, but they would kind of be forced into it. He's too cheap for the production that you would expect if he does play. So Allen, I think, is really, really important because it would give you 2 pretty high upside value plays in Ed Davis and Rondae Hollis-Jefferson.
Ed Davis has given you a fantasy point per minute this year, and for most of his career, you've gotten right around the fantasy point per minute from Ed Davis. He's just, better in short bursts. Okay, Memphis and wait, this game's on the slate? Yeah, I'm not even kidding. I totally forgot. No, that's right, because Mike Conley's.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're not on Mike Conley.
Mike Conley's cheap, but other than that, this game to me is pretty much he's special. Bring it back.
Yeah, it's Mike Conley for me. I like Mike Conley. I like his price tag. He's actually, if you want to look into it, he's actually done well in this matchup twice already this year. And then I just don't care about anything else in this game. Kyle Anderson's cheap if you wanted a 4K guy that I like more than Ryan Arcidiacono.
I think you had to say Kyle Anderson's trash.
Also, yes.
That guy, I mean, he is really cheap. And the truth is, he's popping as a really good value on my projections, but I just keep ignoring it like he doesn't exist.
Well, I mean, I think he played the thing. Okay, so in all seriousness, he sucks, and I would feel so much better having JJ Barea. But I think that you have to, or at least I have Anderson projected for 8 to 10 minutes more than JJ Barea at the same price.
So do I. You have to project him for that much more. Actually, you haven't projected 8 to 10 minutes more. I haven't projected around 11 minutes more because I think he keeps seeing, this game right now. You're talking about a spread of how many points? It's a 3.5 point spread. I'm just really not. I think he gets way more minutes. So that
Dylan Brooks is also questionable.
Yeah, he if you saw that injury happen and B went to pass it through his legs and it got stuck like under the bend in his knee and then twisted him around, and I'm like, oh, he just got an ACL from a basketball.
Yeah, that's.
Zeus Q says, Laffy, how do you not mention Gasol? He's 71K. He's the GOAT. I mean, sure, we can mention Gasol if you'd like. We can talk about Gasol. He's facing Rudy Gobert. I think it's a tough matchup on both sides of the court. I know you're going to refer to the big game he had against Utah earlier this season, and he's played well against them twice. So, sure, that's a perfectly reasonable call at Gasol at 7,100.
Yeah, I don't have any issue with Gasol. I'm just trying not to name every single center on DraftKings that's $1,000 too cheap.
Yeah, because all of them are. Right,
exactly. And Gasol is like the most expensive out of the group that's $1,000 too cheap.
Yeah, so, look, he's had 2 good games against Utah and Gobert this season. He's a good player. He's one of the best facilitating centers in the league. He's actually, interestingly enough, just while we're on the topic, I definitely don't want to spend too much time or any more than necessary on this game. But Marc Gasol, from a rebounding standpoint, is actually averaging a career high 9.2. He averaged that back in 2009. His rebounding had fallen off, though, and he seems to have picked it back up. So just in terms of a floor play, I think Gasol is always a guy that you can rely on because he's a great passer. He's rebounding fine. He'll give you like 15, 20 points at him. And he's a good shot blocker, can get his hands in for some steals. You know how it works.
He's had absolutely no issue in this matchup. So it's right. I mean, if you like him more than guys like DeAndre Jordan or Dwight Howard or Steven Adams, then by all means. For me, I prefer Howard. I prefer Adams. And then it's pretty close between Gasol and Jordan.
All right, OKC and Phoenix. Let's get into it. Have some fun with this one. The Westbrook-less Thunder are 9-point favorites here. 213.5 total. Pretty low for this game, but it is what it is. Phoenix not really playing at a quick pace. Actually, the total jumped to 215. Thunder by 8.5 now. Just updated that. Dennis Schroeder, it's funny because you look at his numbers since replacing Westbrook over the last 3 games, and they haven't been bad, but he's averaging like 17.5 drives. The numbers are solid. Team leading 81 touches per game. But I want to talk first about Steven Adams because this is a guy who, myself included, was never a huge fan of playing him with Westbrook off the court. But check this out, Adam. Not only is he averaging a career high this year in points and rebounds and assists and steals and minutes, but you look at his production without Westbrook. He's averaging 40.2 DraftKings points in 5 games without Westbrook this year. His usage rate goes from 16% to 19.6. His rebounding, and yes, Westbrook makes a big difference in rebounding on that team, goes from 14% to 17%. And his per-minute production goes from 1.01 to 1.07. So he has actually been improved with Westbrook off the court, not only from an efficiency standpoint, but from a usage standpoint and a rebounding standpoint. And he's still sub 7K on DraftKings. So there's another guy, $6,700, that has been really solid lately and continues to give us really consistent production.
Yeah, the usage bump for him is the thing that's really stood out to me as well, because in the past, he became a little bit less productive without Westbrook, but it was mostly a wash because he would rebound more and his usage would go down as a result of not having Westbrook feeding him the ball. But that hasn't been an issue this year. So now the rebounding's gone up, the usage has gone up, and he's still playing huge minutes here. So yeah, I really like Steven Adams in this spot. Phoenix has actually allowed the 10th fewest offensive rebounds per game to opponents this year, and that's obviously where Adams really makes his money, but he's just so good in that aspect that I will give him the edge here.
Yes, sir. I'll give him the edge as well. I like Adams a lot here. I think DeAndre Ayton's a nut. I mean, he's just ridiculously talented. He's got all of the physical attributes that you'd want for a center in 2018, but we know what Adams does to young centers when on the basketball court. I mean, he's too physically dominant, Adam. A guy like Ayton, despite what he's going to be right now in his current state, his current form doesn't scare me one bit.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about the matchup for Adams here.
All right, talk to me about Schroeder and Paul George.
I like both of them. I'm getting more Schroeder than George just because of George's price and the position that he plays. Schroeder so far, he kind of has underwhelmed without Westbrook, but he still has a 28.5% expected assist percentage in his 5 games that Westbrook didn't play. He has a 29% usage rate alongside George without Westbrook on the floor this year, and his price tag hasn't really moved as a result of him underwhelming so far. So I think that he's not really priced for the ceiling he actually has without Westbrook, whereas George, it's not that he's too expensive. It's just that his price tag has already adjusted because of the good games that he's had without Westbrook. And then, I still think that George is a really good play. It's just easier to get Schroeder into your lineups.
It is easier to get him into your lineups. He's cheap. He's 72 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, you're getting him on FanDuel, and it's 73, I think, on DraftKings.
Yeah, 73 on DraftKings.
Yeah, he's still affordable, and if you just overlook the fantasy points, which I get it, it's not easy to do, but at least consider that his usage leads the team with Westbrook off the court right now. It's over the last 3 games too. It's around 29%. So. I mean, the big game potential is still there. Like the ceiling game is still very much there against Phoenix.
Right. If you talk about rate, like the rates is what I think gives you a ceiling. If you have a high usage rate, you have the opportunity at least to have a big game. His usage rate in this situation is about 1 percentage point lower than Paul George's. His assist percentage is higher, and his rebounding is lower, but not way lower. The difference is that Paul George is just a much more efficient player, a much more efficient scorer than Schroeder. But efficiency, even inefficient players can have efficient games, and that's where ceiling comes from. And that's why I think that Schroeder being really cheap is really appealing in tournaments.
Yeah, especially when George is $3,000 more than Schroeder is on FanDuel. And I get it, different positions, but you're still looking at 2 players on the same team that are going to use most of the possessions.
Right.
I guess quick shout out to Jeremy Grant, because I know we'll get questions there. You want to throw him out there against Phoenix, be my guest. But we know what Jeremy Grant is. I don't really think we need to spend much time there, Adam.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm with you. I think he plays low, probably 32 to 34 minutes, projects for 28 to 30 fantasy points.
Yeah, which isn't bad. So I think he's fine. He'd be the only guy other than Adam, Schroeder, and George. Anything for Phoenix?
Mostly in game stack situations. This Oklahoma City team has just been so good defensively that Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, while I think they're too cheap for their upside, they just don't come out as top plays for me. I think it is worth noting that with TJ Warren being inserted into the starting lineup and playing huge minutes now, not only do I really like TJ Warren, and he's my favorite play from the Suns because of his still discounted price tag, but Devin Booker alongside Warren this season actually has a 28% usage rate compared to 32.5 overall this season. So it's not really surprising, I don't think, but you do see a hit for Devin Booker in terms of usage, and now he also has this difficult matchup against Oklahoma City.
All right, fair enough. You guys have any questions? We'll try and circle back if there's anyone you think we missed. You can also go to awesemo.com, check out the articles, the projections, the projected ownership simply by using Deeper Dive as the promo code, all one word on the Join Now. Click Join Now on the homepage. So let's talk about the Spurs and the Kings. Kings are at home. Spurs, 3-point favorites on the road. You got a nice slightly robust 220 total. Derrick White played his first game, played 16 minutes coming back from that heel injury. Then he played 30 minutes at him, starting at point guard. And you look at or starting. I'm not sure how much point guard he's playing, quite a bit though. You look at the rotation in that last game. Yeah, 6.5 minutes was his first rotation. Then he came back in the second quarter. He played 6:23. All right, and then in the third quarter, Derrick White plays around 6:07, so similar to the first, and then comes back in the third, plays 2:22 through 5.5 minutes into the fourth, and then closed out the game. Along with Forbes, Aldridge, DeRozan, and Patty Mills. He played 3:07 to close out the game. Derrick White in college was a kind of do-it-all type player. 18 points, 4.5 assists, 4 rebounds, 1.5 blocks, 1.2 steals. He can kind of do everything. And in that last game that he played, where they had 30 minutes, he actually was he was involved a lot. Actually led the team in potential assists and finished second behind Aldridge in total touches. So, yeah, Derrick White to me is someone that I will have interest in today at his price point on DraftKings, not on FanDuel where he's up at like $6K or something, 6,300. Derrick White at 4,300 to me on DraftKings is just too cheap. I like the kid's upside, especially if Pop's going to give him 28, 30 minutes. What are you doing with the Spurs?
Yeah, I completely agree with you on White. I think that Rudy Gay coming back would potentially can mess things up just so we don't know exactly how the rotation is going to go. But I don't see any reason to think that Derrick White's the one that loses minutes here. Like I think Cunningham loses minutes, or I think that Bryn Forbes goes back to the bench and loses some minutes.
Both lose some minutes.
Right, exactly. And White's not reliant on scoring. Like you said, he contributes in so many different ways that having another high usage guy like Gay come back to the lineup doesn't concern me too much with Derrick White on DraftKings, where he's still really cheap. So he's another guy that I would rather play than JJ Barea by a pretty wide margin. Yeah,
and another thing to add, if there's one thing this team definitely lacks, it is quality facilitating, right? Like there's no more Kawhi, not to say he's the best passer, but you don't have Dejounte Murray. Like Popovich and his team, they need somebody that can actually, outside of DeRozan, initiate the offense, bring the ball up the court, has good court vision. Derrick White has all of that. I expect, mind you, Pop wasn't just sitting him through the first 10 games. He was out with an injury. He went from 16 to 30 minutes. I have a lot of love for White today. SJM asked us to sort out the cheap guard situation. Well, we're not going to go back and talk about all of them, but I can tell you I like White. And then in the next game we get to, there are some cheap guards that I also like. Those are my favorite ones from the slate. So stay tuned for the next 6 minutes and you'll get the answer to that.
Yeah, I think me and you were on the same page there.
Okay. Do you want to go ahead and round out this game for me? Because I think DeRozan on DraftKings or on FanDuel at 9,100, where he's 400 cheaper than LaVine, is actually a really solid, lower ownership play. But I'm not really coming in heavy on anyone on the Spurs outside of White.
Yeah, neither am I. DeRozan, to me, I expected him to regress in the assist department, and that's a big reason that we saw him start out so well this year. Derrick White being back isn't going to help him there, and he's still just, I think, priced for what he's done in the past as opposed to what I project him to do moving forward. LaMarcus Aldridge, I think, is more reasonably priced for how I project him. Still not a core play for me, but I expect that I'll have more Aldridge than DeRozan.
Okay. Yeah, I'm on DeRozan. FanDuel, I just think that price is appealing. Sacramento, you have some good players, guys that have given us good value. De'Aaron Fox, Buddy Hield, Bogdanovic will play today, by the way. So that's to be expected. But I'm not huge on them. I think Willie Cauley-Stein is the one guy I do have some interest in. Capella and Whiteside, since Pau Gasol, believe it or not, has been out, picked up 37 combined rebounds against this front court. You basically have Aldridge and Jakob Poeltl who are eating up the center minutes here, and I really don't think this is that tough of a matchup for Cauley-Stein. Maybe we're on a different page, but Cauley-Stein seems to be the one guy, at least for me, that I have the real interest in Sacramento. Am I missing anyone?
Well, I'm with you on Cauley-Stein. I love him. I don't know how his price tag is dropping, but this is a spot where I like him. On DraftKings, I like De'Aaron Fox at 7,100 too. I just think that he plays too many minutes. He's too involved in this offense. it's not a terrible matchup. It's not a great one, but it's not a terrible matchup for him. I just think that he's too cheap, and I'm rolling the dice, and I wouldn't do this in single entry or 3-max. I am working in some Bogdanovic here just because I'm not super confident that he is limited to like 20 minutes. I know he played 20 minutes last game, and he played 18 the game before that, but it kind of looks like his stint in the last game was pulled a little bit short in what was quickly becoming a blowout against the Lakers. If he even gets like 24 minutes here at the same price as JJ Barea and a fraction of the ownership, I want to have some Bogdanovic.
All right, fair enough. Let's close this out. Last game here. Is there anything else in this game before we move on that you think we should discuss?
I think Marvin Bagley gets 22 to 24 minutes because I think that with Kosta Koufos out, what we were seeing before he came back was that Harry Giles was playing backup 5 in the first half and Bagley was getting it in the second half. So I think that he has the potential to get to 22 to 24 minutes. He still doesn't project as a great play for me, but it's better than normal.
All right, Clippers, Golden State, last one here. No Stephen Curry. We will have Draymond Green. Warriors 3.5-point favorites, 225.5 total. Golden State on the road against the Clippers here. By the way, stick around after the show. Josh and Eddie coming up next, 6 o'clock Eastern, bringing you up until lock on the Live Before Lock show. And before you head out and head over to theirs, hit us with a thumbs up. We got above 100. We're at 134. That's nice work. We appreciate you guys. Okay, the guards I was talking about, Gilgeous-Alexander, trying to go quick here, Adam. I have so many awesome numbers on him, but we'll leave that behind the paywall, or if you want to sign up for a free trial, you can do that. Just know this, that the minutes he's getting and seeing a lot of ball handling duties bode really well for him at this price point.
Yeah, love him, love Beverly. Avery Bradley's still questionable. If he comes back, I don't expect it to have a huge impact on them. I think it would have more of an impact on the fringe guys that are playing behind them. Maybe, takes a couple minutes away from Gilgeous-Alexander and Beverly, but I would still like them at their price tags. I think they're both really good plays. Gallinari, I think, is underpriced, and I absolutely love Montrezl Harrell here. I wouldn't be surprised I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see like a 7 or 8 minute Marcin Gortat stint to start each half, and then Harrell just play the rest of the game.
I wouldn't be surprised if Harrell starts. I really wouldn't.
I would, just because rotation wise, it would end up being weird. I think
it could. I wonder if Doc doesn't want to get their asses blown off the court in the first 8 minutes of a game. I don't know. We'll see. But I put it this way: I'd be surprised if this game stays. I wouldn't be surprised if it stays competitive. If it stays competitive, I'd be surprised if Harrell doesn't play 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I'm with you.
Yeah. So you said Beverly. Maybe you said Bradley, but yeah, Bradley's the questionable one here. So that could play into it. I'm really hoping that he is out. So that's kind of big news. I do think it will affect that backcourt enough to where I have a little bit of concern, but not too much. And aside from that, Durant, Durant's a really good play. He's my favorite top shelf play on the slate. We don't have to go further than that. I'll let you break down Golden State and we'll close it out.
Yeah, so behind Durant, I like Draymond. He has a 33% assist percentage with this group. Trying to work out his rotations, he has about a 33% assist percentage without Curry, with Durant, and with Clay. So I like him a lot. Clay, I have projected for about 26% usage, which is kind of the same thing as normal. If he gets hot, then he'll have a good game, but there's not a great reason to expect him to project higher. And I'm not on Quinn Cook with Draymond back. I still think Cook plays plenty of minutes, but you have Livingston back. You're going to have Iguodala on the floor. You have Draymond as another ball handler out there. So I think that Cook's assist numbers drop, and I just don't want to count on him getting up 16 shots and making 11 of them again.
All right, sounds good. We're heading out. Stick around. Josh and Eddie coming up next, Live Before Lock. Hit us up on Twitter. You got any extra questions at LaFi Ship My Money DFS, or in Slack chat. You can find all of us in the basketball channel leading up to lock, and pretty much at all hours of the day. Good luck. We love you guys and all of the help you've provided us making this show what it is. We continue to grow here, and it's been a lot of fun. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the Deeper Dive.